Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Welcome back to Dynasty Rewind Off the Rip. I'm your host, Bob Van Duzer. In every episode, we aim to provide actionable advice to help you navigate the Dynasty Fantasy Football landscape. Whether that's through talking trades, analyzing player values, discussing Dynasty Rankings, or diving into the nitty-gritty of Dynasty strategy, we have you covered. Now, if you enjoy this podcast, the easiest way to show your support is by leaving a rate and a review wherever you're listening. This does more than you know to help the podcast grow. But with all that said and all the promo in the books, let's get to the content you came for. Zack, we are back. It has been a minute, but we're back for the first time in 2025, talking about what we learned in 2024. We've got 5 things coming in hot, but before we get into it, please leave a like on the video, comment down below, drop some ratings, reviews, wherever you're listening via podcast. We want to hear about it, hear what you're thinking. Tell us some of the things you've learned. I know some of the things our Patreon members, our Discord members have learned is that it's very beneficial to be in a Discord community group chat like ours that you can try out for a free week trial. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in there for, like I said, that 1-week trial. But with that said, Zach, all the promo in the books, let's get to the content that people came for, that they've been waiting for oh so long in 2025, what we learned in 2024. You got a topic. I've got several as well. Let's talk about them. What do you got first up here?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year to you, Bob. Happy New Year to our viewers. I know it's like January 6th or 7th whenever this video is coming out, and the statute of limitations may have passed. But I haven't seen anyone. So Happy New Year to everyone. Good to see you guys and be back for 2025. My first lesson, Bob, and you've been in the Discord with me, Bob. You've seen me saying this quite a bit. And I think your first point and my first point are going to go hand in hand. But for me, something I wanted to hammer home and something that I want to, maybe this doesn't have to turn into a bigger discussion, but my overall point is we need to have better discussions about players, is that situations around the NFL matter. The lesson that I learned here, Bob, was, something that even we have said on this channel is talent over situation. And it's just not true anymore. Sure, in some certain, in some instances that matters, but situation really matters for a lot of players around the NFL. And I'm just going to name you a handful of players that we don't have to talk about, but we can just, I say their name and you know what I'm talking about. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Sam Darnold, Darnell Mooney, Bryce Young, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, Jonnu Smith. You know what I'm talking about already. Players that were instrumental in a lot of fantasy championships this year that we necessarily didn't talk about last year. Now, of course, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, sure, but not to the level that they were this year. We'd never seen that before. That's for darn sure. Derrick Henry ran for 1,900 yards and didn't win the rushing title. Like, that's unheard of, okay? So these are players that moved into better situations, either via free agency or trade, or stayed on their current team, but their surroundings changed. And even more so, some of those happened in the offseason, Bob. Some of those happened in the middle of the season because in the instance of the Browns, they got a competent quarterback who could throw the ball. And all of a sudden, that situation changed. Jameis Winston changed the dynamic of the Cleveland Browns fantasy football skill position players. Now, obviously, the Browns aren't talking about that, but we are. Situations change all the time. And we need to be a little bit more aware of those, maybe have some more talking points around our dynasty focuses moving forward. And this was something I was really talking a lot about in our Discord, is like, I'm sure everybody's seen it, but it's that picture of Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield in the Carolina Panthers uniform side by side. It's like, wow, these two dudes were on the same team 2 years ago, and now they're both like top 5 quarterbacks in our dynasty seasons this year, whatever it may be, top 8, I don't know. So look, it's not something that we can necessarily do before it happens, Bob. but it's one that we can identify either while it's happening or when it happens, right? We have to get out of our mindset of, well, this player didn't produce in XYZ situation, therefore he can't produce in this situation moving forward. It's like, no, like, and I remember the one I harp on a lot is the Darnell Mooney one, where it's like, dude, Justin Fields was his quarterback, and Justin Fields can't throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. Darnell Mooney is really a wide receiver that excels in the middle of the field, at 10 to 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. And now here he is with Kirk Cousins, and there's no other wide receiver outside of Drake London. I wasn't really worried about Kyle Pitts, where to take away from him. And lo and behold, that ended up coming to fruition. And I was somebody that bought a lot of Darnell Mooney in the offseason for 3rd and 4th round picks, because you could see the situation change. They gave him a good contract. It wasn't a 1-year, $3 million contract. I think it was a 3-year, $30 million contract they gave him or something like that. So we really need to, ask ourselves why they didn't produce in certain situations, and is there an opportunity for them to produce in other situations if things change or evolve on their current team. So it's really not like this is what I'm doing moving forward, but I'm trying to have a better dialogue about, hey, this player wasn't good in this situation, but here's why I think they can be good in this situation. And another one that I know you're going to talk about in just a second, but that I just kind of in the beginning of the season I was really talking about in the Discord was Sam Darnold. I was like, this is getting very interesting. So I don't want to take too much from what you're going to say, but just for me, Bob, situations around the NFL, around teams, and around players matter. And when those start to change or evolve, we need to be better about having that dialogue and saying, I see an opportunity here because of XYZ, and not just, hey, this guy didn't produce last year in another situation, so he's not going to produce in this situation moving forward.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. And I agree. Definitely something we just need to take into context, because players can be so good, but their situations are trash. That situation cannot be overlooked anymore. And I think that the more and more we get into this and, experienced Dynasty players, content creators, whatever the case is, looking at each situation under a microscope is just going to help us that much more in defining what these possibilities are. For players that can kind of break out like Darnell Mooney, like you mentioned. Another thing that should have been kind of a glaring red flag for us is the 3-year, $39 million contract. That's not nothing, with $26 million guaranteed. Now there is a pretty easy out after 2025, but that's still a bit away. There's no need to cut him, so that's something that could certainly happen. But $1 million.
We're so done with new year, new you. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
And your point does kind of play into mine. And my lesson learned is take more shots on these rehomed former first-round quarterbacks. We have 3 great examples now, tried and true. You got Geno Smith, you got Baker Mayfield, you got Sam Darnold. You could throw out the argument that Justin Fields was having a better season before he ultimately got benched for Russell Wilson, just kind of out of the blue, I'll say. It was just, hey, Russell Wilson's back, he's starting, you're not. And maybe that's still somewhat of an indictment on Fields, but that's still someone to keep an eye on. He's had another year to be a journeyman, take in what the NFL is, and he's probably going to go play somewhere else next year. And if it's like you look at with Geno Smith, you look at with Baker Mayfield, these guys were signed, dime a dozen deals for nothing to play against. Drew Lock was Geno Smith's competition. Kyle Trask was Baker Mayfield's. Now, Sam Darnold ultimately ended up having J.J. McCarthy, who I still think he would have been the starter throughout the season, even if J.J. McCarthy was healthy. But either which way, there was a little bit more understanding why somebody might be a little more hesitant on Sam Darnold. But I pass on all these guys because I literally did what you talked about in your first point. Well, they sucked here. They were okay here, but really they were just not good quarterbacks. And I thought, didn't want to buy into it. But lo and behold, here I am. And I was able to get a share of Sam Darnold at some point in the season for relatively cheap still. But everybody else, I was late to the boat or missed the boat entirely, whatever the case is. So I'm just not doing that anymore. And you don't have to limit yourself with former first-round quarterbacks. You brought up a bunch of different position players that could be. Jerry Jeudy, a great example down the stretch, was pretty darn good. A guy who not rehomed, but somebody who I want to take a very deep dive on this offseason is Marvin Mims, somebody who has just been exploding over the last several weeks of the season. Not a rehome like I mentioned, but just in general, somebody who did nothing their rookie year, which is always a huge red flag for what we're hoping for production later on, and didn't do a whole lot the first half of this season. But man, if you had him and you were starting him anywhere in your leagues, he was a bonus wide receiver one down the stretch that you didn't have to pay anything for, was free on waivers in any and all redraft leagues. And in Dynasty, probably didn't cost much to get during the season. Now those costs have obviously changed. But I want to take my shots on these guys. And so anybody that was a former first-round pick that is with a coach we like, a better system, doesn't seem to have much competition for a starting role, take your shot, man. None of these guys coming into their starter seasons before they had their second coming, let's say, cost much. I think at most you were paying a second-round pick for these guys. And that's probably Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. Geno Smith, you were probably paying a third. I just think that taking the time we'll look over the course of the offseason and see who gets moved around. There's always going to be movement in the offseason and plenty of things to dive into. So that's definitely a lesson learned for me. Take more shots on some rehomed former first-round quarterbacks. Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this before we move along.
Yeah, I think really what I'm doing with this point, Bob, is I'm identifying the teams that I'm watching who they get quarterbacks. I'm looking at Kevin O'Connell. I'm looking at Sean Payton. I'm looking at Dave Canales, which, by the way, Bryce Young is another one that we can talk about on that list, because Bryce Young has been on absolute fire at the end of the season. I mean, he was ridiculous yesterday. I think he accounted for 5 or 6 touchdowns for the Carolina Panthers, and his situation changed, right? Another quarterback situation I'm looking at is, as long as he survives Black Monday, which is the day we're recording this, is the Titans head coach, Callahan, just because he's worked with Joe Burrow. I still put Brian Daboll in there. We'll see how that turns out. The microscope is still on him, and he has survived Black Monday. And then of Kyle Shanahan, that's another system. Any quarterback that gets in there, I'm interested. So let me give you a name right now. I have no idea what happens, but I've already started acquiring shares. It's Daniel Jones.
Sure.
Daniel Jones. He's on the practice squad for the Vikings. I think that whatever happens with the Viking situation, whoever is the quarterback next year, I think Daniel Jones has a good chance to be the backup quarterback next year. And that's how I have a lot of these guys, by the way. I have a lot of Sam Darnold because I had Brock Purdy and he was the backup, So I have these situations. So because I have a lot of Sam Darnold now, I have a few shares of Daniel Jones to have that backup quarterback, because if, for whatever reason, Sam Darnold goes down, I think Daniel Jones is really the backup quarterback there, even though I think maybe Nick Mullins or somebody else is still hanging around. So love this point. And we really need to be better about not necessarily our quarterback evaluations, but our discussions around quarterbacks. That's what I'm taking away from these top 2 points is, hey, we need to be better about having more open-minded dialogue maybe around these quarterbacks, and just say, hey, just because this guy didn't succeed here, were things around him, was he in an environment to succeed? And for a lot of these guys, Baker Mayfield, Cleveland, well, no. Look what Cleveland is dysfunction personified. As much as I like Kevin Stefanski, that organization, the way they run themselves from the top down, is dysfunction personified. So are the Jets. And that was where Sam Darnold was and where Geno Smith was. So I look at these situations and say, now Daniel Jones, I actually like the structure that the Giants have. I know they look bad with the Saquon Barkley thing, but they did really well with their draft class last year. Like, nobody's talking about that. They hit on their draft picks in almost every round. From Malik Neighbors all the way down to Tyrone Tracy. Like, they hit in almost every round in the draft. So love this point by you, Bob. It's something I'm definitely trying to have in terms of our discussions around quarterbacks, and just saying, hey, just because he didn't succeed here, I still believe in the talent. And if he gets into a better situation, I'd like to buy in. So again, I'm in on Daniel Jones right now. I'm just stashing him. I'm buying in for he's been throwing in every trade. Hey, let me take Daniel Jones. And let me tell you something. People are happy to get him off their roster for something.
Real quick, before we move along, I do want to make sure to mention, shout out one of our patrons, one of our longtime patrons and Discord members, Skull Nation. I might be blanking on the name here. I believe it's Jeremy. Shout it out. Sam Darnold will finish as a top 15 quarterback this year. He sure did. And there was a lot of doubt. We did a hot takes portion in our Discord, like, hey, throw a hot take out you have for the year. He had Sam Darnold will finish as top 15. I have him at, let's see real quick. I have him at quarterback 11 in points per game and quarterback 9 on the season in general. So shout out you, School Nation / I think Jeremy. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. But either way, Zach, we'll move along, talk about the next one. Love this point. This has such an interesting dichotomy to it. So let's break it down. Let's talk about it. What do you got?
One of my lessons learned in the 2024 Dynasty Fantasy Football season is be cautious with injury optimism. Your priority handcuffs really matter. Now, the words injury optimism, I first heard from Matt Harmon. So I want to give credit there. It's not something that I came up with, and I'm not copying him. He put that out into the stratosphere, and I've been reflecting more and more on that and been like, wow, that is a phenomenal point that I never really thought of. There were a lot of instances this season, Bob, where teams lied or undersold injuries. No one more relevant than Christian McCaffrey, right? Prior to the season, if you don't remember, nobody knew the extent of the injuries to Christian McCaffrey's Achilles, or Achilles is plural, whatever. Is you get what I'm trying to say.
Whatever.
Comment the right word in the comment section. And much less that he would miss any time at all, much less 4, 8, or 10 weeks or whatever it ended up being. And so we get that news, I think it's like Saturday or Sunday of the football season, that he's going to be inactive Monday. And there's really only so much you can do to safeguard your teams here, Bob. But having Jordan Mason in this instance for the first half of the season was a game changer for a lot of teams. And if you didn't have him, it was also a game changer because you suffered the consequences of not having. And what I like to do, if I have a heavy investment in a position, specifically the running backs or quarterbacks, I want the backup just in case. Doesn't mean I'm always just going to plug and play the backup, but I have at least that option. And Jordan Mason, have no idea how good he really is or really isn't. It's a great system to be a running back in. It's a great offensive line. It's a great offensive philosophy and system there. And he produced the first half of the season. And so what I'm taking away from this is I don't know what to say about injury optimism other than just don't take everything that you hear at face value, right? Because we got lied to. Another one that didn't really impact as much was Nico Collins, right? Nico Collins injures his hamstring. Oh, he's day to day. And then like 2 days later, he's on the IR. These teams, they give out a lot of misinformation, and sometimes they don't even tell you what the real situation is until they absolutely have to for whatever benefit that provides them. I can't say what it is, but I think we just have to be better prepared for that. And I was actually somebody who did buy Christian McCaffrey in the offseason. I had a couple of shares because I wanted to get in. I wanted to have some fun. And I didn't have Jordan Mason. And I paid the price in those leagues. So it's a lesson to where, hey, if you buy Breece Hall, go get Braylon Allen. If you have give me another solid running back, right? If you have Bijan Robinson, go get Tyler Algier. It can't cost you too much. And I think Tyler Algier can produce 75% of what Bijan can in that system. Tyler Algier is shown to be a good running back. So it's just a point of, hey, protect yourself in these instances moving forward, because in situations where I didn't protect myself, it probably cost me the season, Bob.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that with, I wanted to get on the fun with Christian McCaffrey, and then it's like, well, you didn't have any fun with Christian McCaffrey this season. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with this. This goes back to that overarching theme of just having depth and protecting yourself. Like you said, when you heavily invest in something, spend that little extra, get the warranty. Don't leave the store without getting the warranty on things you pay a lot of money for.
So good.
A lot of people want to say it's a scam, but hey, get the warranty, get the protection with that handcuff, especially when you have the obvious handcuffs. I don't want to play games with, backfields that are super ambiguous that it's like, well, I don't know who the next guy up's going to be. But when you have your Bijans, your Braylon Allens, or I guess you'd say Breece Hall, when you have those guys and you have the backers behind them, Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier, respectively, investing in those guys doesn't take you that much more, and it's only going to cost you more if you don't invest in that warranty up front. And I love what you mentioned with the quarterbacks. Another year where we get to week 17, championship week, bunch of quarterbacks missing time, and you're scrambling. And not that you necessarily love to have to start these guys, but sometimes you're just in a tough spot where you need to throw one of these guys in. I'm not saying that's going to be every scenario, but just having the option where, hey, all of my other players are injured. I don't have an extra super flex spot to throw in. I'm going to throw in Kenny Pickett, or I'm going to throw in Cooper Rush, whoever the case is. Whoever can start a game for me this week that's healthy. It just another year, Joe Flacco, another example of a guy who started week 17. It's every year, and this was a point I thought about putting on here too, was just every year we have this issue with not having quarterbacks. And that doesn't necessarily even mean going and getting all the handcuff quarterbacks, but maybe, and I've been kind of against this for a while, but if you get to a certain point with your team where you have a bunch of depth at running back, wide receiver, tight end, whatever the case is, see if you can go invest in a fourth quarterback just for giggles, just in case, just to have an emergency quarterback, or make sure you have 3 really good quarterbacks that you can rely on any given week. Something to think about, because quarterbacks, time and time again, not having those guys down the stretch hurts. Not having just players in general down the stretch hurts. And that's why I'm so anti something we've talked about a little bit here and there, is that all-in mentality of like, I'm just going to throw all these picks at the wall, all these extra players at the wall, and I'm going for it. I hate that, because at some point, maybe you win a championship, and maybe that's all that's important to you, is that 1-year championship. And if that's the case, you get it, great. But if you don't get it, that sucks. And it's going to catch up with you next season. You'll be hurting for depth. You won't have any extra assets to play with once injuries inevitably do happen. They will ravage your team at some point between that, bye weeks, etc. You're going to be in trouble. So that's why I'm against that. But getting back on the rails here, huge lesson learned for me, and not something that I necessarily do, but I know the community is so prone to this. And, keep trade cut isn't the best benchmark to use, but there are people out there using it. And there's people out there that are putting in their data points saying this person is now God's gift to football. And I'm not saying to go off keep trade cut values or anything like that, but just avoiding knee-jerk reactions on values, whether it's because of an injury, whether it's because of a great boom game, whatever the case is. And I'm not here to say that Jayden Daniels is or isn't a future quarterback 1 in fantasy football or dynasty fantasy football, whatever the case is. But there was a time in November where he was the number 1 quarterback valuation wise. And not saying that's wrong, not saying he shouldn't be, but all I'm going to say is that CJ Stroud was last year too. And how do people feel about him right now? How do people feel about Patrick Mahomes right now, who ultimately hasn't had quite as much of a fall, and kind of bounced back down the stretch of the season? But with how much values change and fluctuate and sometimes get ripped up by the redraft aspect of things, and recency bias especially, just getting hinged up on these values that aren't consistent. I can pluck several names for each position, each top 12 that have changed. And then there's 7 other names, or 7 or 8 other names that have stayed the same year to year, year to year. Those are the type of names I want to invest in. I don't want to get caught up in this knee-jerk reaction of value. Just some guys looking at running back. Bucky Irving, a guy who is now a running back 1 on Keep Trade Cut. Chase Brown, a guy who's running back 1 on Keep Trade Cut. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they are not. I love these players. I was the biggest Bucky Irving fan on the channel. Love Chase Brown as well. But I'm not paying running back 7 prices for the guy. Back when I could acquire him for a 2nd-round pick, fine. Can't do that anymore, obviously. But just getting hung up on these values that just inflate, I'm not about it. Because at the end of the day, it's another thing. It's going to catch up with you. If you keep going and investing in the booming asset value-wise, you're going to end up with no value left on your team. And some of these guys will hit. Some of these guys will, not to a Puka level, but will hit like a Puka, where you invested at a moderate price and it just keeps going up. Some of that will happen. Then you'll have guys like, to some similar effect, we talked about this coming into the season, not the same thing, but same kind of concept, that just fall off the rails. Zach Moss, Zamir White. Both were guys that were getting first-round picks thrown at them coming into the season. Now they are nothing value-wise. Zamir White is cuttable in most instances, I would say. So, I mean, I don't want anybody out there getting caught up in these knee-jerk reaction to values where one big game, you know, Jaden Daniels has a great game, wins on a Hail Mary, whatever the case is. And then Josh Allen has a week like he did last week in the championship round, or whenever it was that he had a bad week. I'm mixing up my weeks now. And then it's like, oh, well, Jaden Daniels, because of 1 week, is now the quarterback one. Don't do that stuff. Josh Allen's still plenty young, still puts up plenty of points. Same deal with Lamar Jackson's just out here. It's like, why am I not the quarterback one? But Jaden Daniels, he's a rookie, so he has to be. And it's like, well, I'll take the guy who's been top 5 for the last 6 years now, or whatever it's been. So maybe not that long, but just don't get caught up in the knee-jerk reaction of values. And I get values change every single day. And, you know, we don't hate players, we hate values. But sometimes, man, just got to take a breath. And you don't have to, because the value's booming doesn't mean you have to buy in. Just wait a week or two, because sometimes that value will plummet right back down as fast as it went up. Zach, feel free to touch on this one before you get into your final point here.
Yeah, it's a good point, you know, and we can tie it back into one of my earlier points about situations, right? Well, what changed about somebody's value that it may have dropped or may have shot up the roof? And is that change, is it something that is reliable moving forward, or is it something that can be changed moving forward? In the case of CJ Stroud, look, CJ Stroud didn't forget how to play football. Just all his wide receivers got hurt in various different aspects, and his offensive line was atrocious towards the end of the year. And if you need any further proof, look at Joe Mixon, who in your fantasy playoffs was he lost you games in the fantasy playoffs. And it's not necessarily that Joe Mixon got bad at football. It's that offensive line got worse and worse and more hurt and more hurt. Teams were stacking the box because there is no Tank Dell. There is no Stephon Diggs anymore to stretch the field. So now defenses can stack the box against a weaker offensive line, and that has a trickle-down effect on CJ Stroud and on Joe Mixon. So that is what I'm talking about, Bob. That conversation that I just had right there, I feel like that is what we have not been having in Dynasty Fantasy Football, because like people are down on CJ Stroud right now, and I'm not. What happened and why did he suffer in fantasy or in production this year? And is it something that can be fixed? Because I've seen the talent that he has. I've seen what he can do. It's hard to show that when all your weapons are hurt and the guys in front of you are bad. And I think that's a conversation we can extend to a lot of different players. We can extend that conversation to to Caleb Williams right now. We can extend that conversation to Caleb Williams and say, hey, you know, is this all Caleb Williams, or is it the situation around him? Has there ever been a Bears quarterback to flourish in that system? How's the offensive line? So on and so forth. We could literally do this all day long. So I love that. And again, I think, you know, doing what you said and then tying it into what I said and just, hey, let's have a conversation about these values and why they're shifting. And that's what our Discord is for. We throw things out there. I'm on there. You're on there. Nate's on there. Bob's on there. Noah's on there. Caleb's on there. Hoff's on there. All our guys behind the scenes. Sean, they're there. And we're having these dialogues with you. Not all at once, because that's quite a bit. But sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's Caleb's the one that's consistently there. So we appreciate that. But for my last point here, Bob, we are slowly becoming dynasty veterans, right? We're entering our second contracts, right? In our dynasty lifespan here, right? And I really feel like I think I'm on the last year of my rookie contract. Okay, that's where I am in terms of my dynasty headspace. And as I've become more of a veteran player, I have felt the effects of overvaluing rookie picks. And I think this is a great point to close on, because we are closing the book on the fantasy season and we are shifting into rookie mode. And so let's have a conversation about this. It's not to say I don't have rookie picks, right? But turning rookie picks into veteran players may not have as high as a ceiling as some rookies have, but it will definitely demand a safer floor for some of your teams. And the later you get in your drafts, I could even extend this to the second round of rookie drafts now. There are lesser and lesser hits in your rookie drafts. And again, I'm not saying rookie picks suck. Don't go after rookie picks. This year's draft is lacking a little bit in certain positions, quarterbacks, wide receivers. It's a little, there's going to be players we all love, but it's definitely not like you had 5 or 6 viable quarterbacks come out last year. You had a ton of wide receivers come out last year. This year's wide receiver class, just off the rip, leaves a lot to be desired after the top 3 or 4 guys. And I'm not even including Travis Hunter in that list. So I'm trying to be more cautious with my rookie picks. I'm at a point now where, like, if I have a lot of 25 rookie picks, I'm kind of disappointed, actually, because this class, it's not the best. It's not the best. This is going to come as no surprise to you, Bob. I hate that I'm about to say this. To you. But I got roped into a startup draft.
Oh, wow.
The $10 league. I was like, all right. And let me just say, so something that's really fun is that the ADP is not updated. So,
sure.
I got Chase Brown all the way down to 200s right now. But I'm trading for rookie picks in the start, but I'm trading for 2027 rookie picks, because that's the Jeremiah Smith, that's the Ryan Williams, that's the Dylan Raiola, potentially that's the there's one other quarterback, DJ Lagway class, all those other guys, so on and so forth.
Sure.
So, it's rookie picks are exciting and they're awesome. One thing I will say is I've never, ever seen a team win a championship only drafting rookie players. A philosophy to have is draft a couple rookies, but safeguard yourself from too many misses, because I have too many Kendra Millers on my roster. I have too many Marshawn Lloyds on my roster. I have a ton of Jermaine Burton on my roster. Yeah, and yes, there are the Bucky Irvings, there are the Tyrone Tracys, but there are a lot of misses around those guys too. And so there are always going to be exceptions to the rule, but the rule typically is draft picks don't hit as often as players that are scoring points right now. So, there are certain situations where I still believe in James Conner. And we talked about this rookie age cliff, by the way, a few weeks back on one of our videos, where I'm just done with that. There are situations where I'll be buying James Conner. I will try to buy Derrick Henry. I will try to buy Saquon Barkley. I am not afraid of veteran players anymore if they are putting up points to help me win games. So just being level-headed with rookies, rookie picks, managing expectations, and relying less and less on them. And hopefully I will get that big second contract in my dynasty life.
I would like a re-up on mine as well. And I'm looking for that big money. But, I love this point, Zach, especially with, like you noted, rookie drafts are forthcoming. They're on the way. And every year we see this trend where rookie pick value inflates. And I was talking to Nate about it the other night. I think Mike was on the call too. This was when we got together for a behind the scenes meeting a little bit. And I was just saying, and this is spoiler alert for what's upcoming, going to leave you guys on a bit of a cliffhanger. I'm not in love with this class right now. And I'll tell you what, I've been aggressive in moving my first round picks, even some second round picks for veteran talents over the course of previous off seasons. I'm going to be even worse about it this year. I'm saying, if I'm not top 5, I'm not super excited right now. And that's because we are still waiting on some declares as of this recording. And as of posting, we're still waiting on the results of the college football playoff, and players on those teams haven't declared yet. A lot of Penn State players, a lot of Ohio State players, Texas, etc. So we're still waiting on a good bit of declares. Hopefully that'll be out in the next week or two. But this class, man, mighty sus. Love the tight end group. Honestly, like I love the tight end group. I think the running back group has a lot of depth, but that makes it all the more murky when you have a lot of these running backs. And I think some running backs who could have gone back for another season are declaring, because it's like it's kind of a flat board at running back, and it's probably going to be a lot of pick your flavor. But at the end of the day, you know, I go back to, like you touched on, don't see a lot of rookie-only teams or primarily rookie-only teams winning championships. And I've always wanted to look at it kind of like a Ferris wheel, where at the top, you got guys that have been in the league for a few years, your veterans, etc. And then you have guys coming around behind them that are a little younger, that while those players start their decline, then you have younger players filling in for them. Your rookies are at the bottom. You're not expecting much out of them. If you get a Brian Thomas out of your rookie draft, great. If you get a Jaden Daniels, great. If you get a Bo Nix, awesome. But to expect some of these guys as rookies to do these things, this is not normal. We had an outstanding rookie class. And to expect future rookie classes to do these things, especially this class, 2025, that, you know, usually as we get to the season, or as when we get to the draft, is when we're kind of like, uh-oh, this class might not be as good. We're already having questions about the 2025 rookie draft class. And with that being the case, that doesn't bode well for post-draft, how we're going to feel about this draft class. So I'm going to be shipping off picks pretty quick. But that is going to do it for this one and what we learned in 2024. There's plenty more that we've discussed in the Discord. Highly recommend hopping in there, chatting it up with us. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in there for a free 7-day trial and see what we can do for your fantasy teams. On top of that, another option, the roster review option in the pinned comment or the YouTube description box below. Check that out. Get a roster review done by myself, Zach, Mike, or Noah, I think is on our review squad this year. So with all that said, all the promo in the books, I hope that y'all have a lovely new year, and we will see y'all in the next one. Thanks for listening. I do hope that y'all enjoyed. If you did, drop us a rating and a review wherever you're listening. And make sure you're following the show so you don't miss a single episode. If you're looking to go deeper with us and get even more in-depth advice, head on over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Hop in the free 7-day trial to our community Discord and check out some bonus podcasts for free for 7 days while you're there. But with all that said, we are going to get the heck on out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.